Okay, hello everybody. We are going on with the magic square and the target system of our economy. We have talked about steady and appropriate economic growth, and yesterday the topic was price level stability and why price level stability. And today we will go further then and come to the labor market. So, what we have done when we talked about price level stability, we were explicitly talking about how to measure price level, and for this we looked at first, especially to the household sector, and we asked what is our standard consumption basket, and then before calculating the average price level, and this you should keep in mind, we have to take these weighting, and these weights are over time in principally stable, but of course our consumption behavior is changing, not from today to tomorrow, but over the years, and therefore these weights are adjusted, so roughly around every 5 years. So if we have these weights, then we are calculating just the weighted arithmetic mean via multiplying the weights, where are the chosen weights, times the prices, and setting then one base here to 100, we obtain, as always, when we are talking about the relative change of a variable, the growth rate, which is the inflation via index today minus the index yesterday over the index yesterday, the starting point. And here you have in principle, again, the theory. This you should have seen already in your introductory course in statistics. And since this was asked yesterday, you should also keep in mind that the sum of the weights add up in the end to 100%. Yeah, and then of course, doing this little example, we talked also that there is, of course, not only the consumer price index, but we have different parts of GDP, especially. So we look especially also on the export and import prices. And this you really should keep in mind that this consumer price index focuses on the household sector. This is the main part of GDP, but it is not overall GDP. So if we want to look at the price development of the whole economy, then we have to look at the so-called GDP deflator. And to this difference between these two price indices, we come today when we will talk about the labor market and at which prices the different participants in the labor market are looking, especially the enterprises and the workers, because we have different perspective. But to this we will then come later on. Yeah, and what else did we have? Yeah, the quantitative aim. This, especially for the Eurozone, you should also keep in mind that the target is 2% symmetric, that we allow for deviations, higher and lower inflation rates, but in the medium term that we want to have here it is. In the medium term, we want to reach this 2% aim. Here, and the last one, especially, I'm a friend of longer time series so that we know where we are coming from. And this, I hope you will do it also, because quite often people are only discussing using the actual data, and especially for Germany or for the Eurozone as a whole, sometimes the euro or the introduction of the euro is criticized that everything in history was better. And then in Germany, we quite often hear that having the German mark, our own currency, everything was better. The currency was more stable. And if you look then in the data, then you see that the opposite is true. That we had on average almost 2 times higher price development with roughly 3.5%, and also that the volatility around this average price development was larger than looking at the euro. And yeah, well, if we look at this funny guy overseas, he is also almost always talking about anything. Um, Sometimes he is right and sometimes not. Well, but we cannot rely on this, and I hope that you learn also here that you should argue logically and that you really should know your numbers and not talking about only things you want to have. Yeah, I think yesterday he was talking about the criminal statistics, and then in the end, the people in the news said, well, okay, but this has nothing to do with the reality. So please be careful when hearing to this guy overseas. Okay, but that's it as a recapitulation for the price, the aim of price level stability, and then we want to come to the aim of high level employment. And yeah, here in general, not surprising, the aim, what means high level unemployment, the overall aim would be full employment. But then we have to define what do we understand by full employment. Because maybe the first idea would be that everybody is in work, so that we have an unemployment rate of 0%. But then if we think a little bit more about it, fortunately, we are living in a free democracy, and we can, yeah, choose what we want to do due to our preferences. And therefore, we define full employment by everybody is employed who is willing to work. So every willing person has a job, and we are measuring this, and in a minute we come to the definite definition via the unemployment rate. And then if we have a look at the German economy, then we say, okay, this is reached when roughly 3 to 4% of people are unemployed. And this means 1 to 2 million people are unemployed. And Yeah, my question to you is, this seems a reasonably high number. Roughly, we think that in principle, people of an age between 20 to 65 are the potential of workers. These are roughly 45 million people, and the relevant number of 1 to 2 million people, we assume then we are at a level of full employment. What do you think is the reason that we are talking about full employment in a situation where really a relevant number of people are still not in work? Can you think about this? Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Okay, this would be then an impact via the business cycle, but still we could have the target, let's say maybe that only 100,000 people are unemployed, that we cannot reach it, okay, but why is it such a relatively high number if you look at our society and also at the actual discussion in the labor market? Yes, because there are many people who are not willing to work. And yeah, I don't say it is good or bad, but it's just due to our social security system. So everybody in Germany has the free choice to take the subsidies provided by the social security system or to work. And if you, yeah, add this up in Germany, then you can get roughly 900 to 1,000 euros directly every month. And also, our social security system is providing subsidies for your rent in your flat. Also, yeah, principal goods like a telephone, a TV, or washing machine. There you can also apply. Please give me a subsidy so that I can buy, or the general yeah, furniture in your flat. This you can all get. So if you add all these up, then roughly you can say there is a possibility to get around 1,500 euros per month and not working. And then, especially if you look at the low-level wages sector, then it's just your free choice. Shall I work 40 hours a week, earning maybe then 1,700,000 euros, or not working and getting roughly 1,500 euros? And this is just the actual situation. Is this framework of a social security system in our society okay? And we will see how this will develop in the future. But it is, yeah, a quite high subsidy which we are paying. And again, this is no argumentation. Is it good or bad, or these people have to work? This is our framework in our free democracy, and then you have this choice. And then this ends up with this quite relevant number that then we are talking about full employment in a minute. So this is due to the subsidies of the Social Security system for unemployed people. So you had a we will come to this. We will come to this. So, but this slide is too early. Yep, in a minute. We will skip this. We will look at the time series later on. Yep. Also, we come to this also in a minute when we then definitely define what is who is counted to be unemployed. Yep. Because here it is. So in general, we look in Germany when we look at our labor market organization, Berufsakademie für Arbeit. There it is in our social code by law defined that we in general look at people between 15 and 65. But of course, we do not look at people which are in school, or also we do not look at you. So you are students, you are just in an education. But in principle, it could be possible because you can you can end school in Germany when you are 15 or 16 years old. So, and then we define also that we are employed and we could still work, but we are counted as unemployed if we are working only part-time at a level fewer than 15 hours. And if we do this, but on the other hand, in opposite, we are looking for a job, especially which has the social insurance contributions. There is also this system in Germany called mini jobs, where you don't pay social insurance contributions, and that you looking for a job to work more than these 15 hours. And what is also quite important, and this is discussed, how your availability has to be, that you are in general are available for the efforts of our employment agency. And this we had changed 5 years ago until, let's say, until Corona. It was somehow like this, that almost every month you had to show up at the employment agency, that you are still there, and that you had made efforts to get a job. And this we then changed, and this is the actual situation, that right now you only have to show up every half year or almost only 1 year um, at the employment agency. And in the end, that you really get counted is also you have to go to the employment agency and show up and say, well, I don't have a job, because there are, of course, in the economy quite many people who never applied for the social security subsidies. But from an economic perspective, we would say that they are unemployed, but we will also come to this later on. So this is the definition of the, so to speak, official unemployment number, and these are then the registered unemployed people. Well, you see here, this is definition is within the German law, and in general, of course, we want to compare internationally the labor markets. And if we now go to France or to UK or to Italy or the United States, of course, they have a different law. When do we count somebody as unemployed? And since these are different definitions, then you could not in a good way compare these numbers to each other. And because of this, we have also an international standard, and this is done by the ILO, and this is the International Labor Organization. This is in principle the same definition, but if you look in a deeper way within it, then you see it is slightly different. You look at people between 15 and 74. Well, this is maybe a little surprise because in Germany we look until 65, or since we are increasing the retirement age to 67. But of course, you are looking here also at developing countries where you almost have no general security system or a general retirement system. And then you say, well, in general, the people could work until the midst of their 70s. Therefore, you look here at a little bit longer period. Also, you have to actively sort for work, and here over 4 years it should have been you should have been looked for a work, and you should be available within 2 weeks. And now this is the important difference. Due to this definition, it doesn't matter if you are registered or if you are not registered officially in the employment agency. So this is, of course, then no official number, and this number is then obtained. Oops. Via a survey. And then you can ask, well, which number is better, the official or this number? Well, and then of course, the answer is it depends. It depends what question you are posing, and if you want to make an international comparison, then in general, you would have a look at this ILO definition. And if you want to analyze the social security system in Germany, then of course you would have a look at the official data, because only if you are officially unemployed, then of course you get the subsidies. So for Germany, this ILO number is, due to this survey, a little bit lower than the official number of unemployed people. Or if you look at other countries, maybe you find then in the media different numbers, and the reason for this will be mostly then that once you see the official number, and in the other time you see this internationally comparable number due to the International Labor Organization. So that you are not surprised that again, as we when we have talked about prices, that you have different price indices, and here you have also different aggregates measuring unemployment. Okay, but now we want to have a look at the development of unemployment in Germany. And the left diagram, this is the monthly data, and this is yearly data. And what we can see in Germany in general, that we come from the beginning of the 2000s with a almost 20 years lasting falling trend of unemployment. So long. And yeah, in general, we can say, especially after the financial crisis. So this year roughly is the financial crisis, and this is Corona. And yeah, the economic performance was quite well, especially after the financial crisis. We have talked about this when we have looked at the time series of economic growth. But on the other hand, it was not overwhelmingly good. So with this, you cannot really explain this very long-term downturning trend. But then if you look at the demographic situation in Germany, then we are an aging society, and this means that, and this is interesting then for you, that every year, remember we have this retiring age of 65 years, that every year at the upper end, roughly every year more than 200,000 people more are dropping out of the labor market, comparing to the number of you, the young people, who are moving into the labor market. So roughly the people around 20, 25 years. And for this, yeah, we have this general problem in our economy that the enterprises are really seeking for people, because every year they are losing more than the pool, than the size of the pool where they can hire new people. So this is mainly driven by the demographic development. Every year, roughly 200,000 more old people are dropping out of the labor market compared to the number of young people entering the labor market. I read it again. This long-term falling trend is mainly driven by the demographic development, and this means every year 200,000 more old people are dropping out of the labor market compared to the number of young people entering the labor market. Well, and this demographic development will last or will go on at least at until 2030, 2035. And therefore, it is quite surprising that after Corona, we have now an increase of unemployment. Because still from the demographic situation, the unemployment rate should still fall or should more or less stay the same. So since Corona, unemployment is increasing. Well, and therefore there has to be other reasons. And then we have a look at the economic development in general. And there we saw, well, the last 3 years, the economic performance in Germany was quite bad. The last 2 years, we had even a decline of real GDP. And this, of course, then means more or less we have a significant problem in the labor market. And in addition, we have also this structural change of digitalization and the artificial intelligence. And this you should, as young people, should really keep in mind. So it is not that easy as compared 10 years ago in Germany to get just a job. You really need the right competences in the future for the future demand in the labor market. So the situation in the German labor market is, yeah, not the best. And if you look at in the whole in Europe, it is quite similar, maybe not that bad as in Germany, but it is not also not very good in the actual times. So since Corona, unemployment is increasing, especially due to the poor economic performance and the structural change, especially due to digitalization and artificial intelligence. So then there is another aspect which is maybe quite surprising. We have seen that within these two crises here, we had really a deep downturn. Here we had a decrease of -5% in real GDP, and here it was, when I remember it right, roughly 3 to 4. Let's have a look. Oops, here I had this real GDP. Here you see it, 5 to 6 real GDP, and here -4 in the Corona crisis. So, and therefore it is quite surprising that we see almost nothing in the labor market data. We had a really huge decline of the economy and only a slight increase of unemployment in these times. And this is then, yeah, also just the reasons of how we are measuring unemployment, because we have this tool especially developed in the financial crisis, which is called, and maybe you have heard already about this, of short-term work. And this means short-term work if an enterprise is under pressure, that they have the ability to apply for short-term work. So formally, the people are still in work at the enterprise. They have still a contract, but they do not work, and they are paid or they are refunded by the public. And this can last for 6 months, almost 1 year. And if we look how much people were in this tool of short-term work in the crises, in the two main crises here, then we see in the financial crisis, we had roughly in the peak 1.5 million people in short-term work. And in Corona, it was even more. And this was, of course, a very, very special situation there. In the lockdowns, we more or less, said you are not allowed to work because you could not go outside. And in this time, even 5 to 6 million people were in short-term work. So this is then a very significant example where you can say, well, what does these numbers really mean? Because we are more or less just define unemployment away by saying, well, the people economically, they are not working, but we do not define them as unemployed. Okay, and then the last one is my question, because now we want to come to different kinds of unemployment. What are the reasons for unemployment? And here you see, if you look at the development on the monthly basis within a year, that we have a repeating pattern here, that it is twice coming up and twice coming down, the unemployment rate. And do you have an idea what could be the reason for this repeating pattern within a year? So it is more or less, it starts always at January, and then you have more or less the same pattern, that you have a decrease in spring, then it's coming up again, and then you have a decrease in autumn again. Yeah. Yes, this is season. This is the so-called seasonal effect. Because if you look, for example, outside, no, it's stopped. No, it's still raining, and maybe next month it will start snowing. And this means, for example, especially for the construction sector, that we do not build that many houses during winter time. And therefore, just for this reason, we the unemployment is increasing. Or also, if you look at the tourism sector, then of course also during summer times there is more demand for people working in the tourism sector than during winter times. And yeah, in general, we are distinguishing three types of unemployment. So here we are talking now about the reasons of unemployment. And the first one, there you were totally right, is that we look at a short-term period unemployment. This is roughly less then one here, and one type is the seasonal unemployment, and another one, and we will define this also on the next slide, the so-called frictional unemployment. Then we say we have a medium-term unemployment, and this is the so-called cyclical unemployment. And with this, a reason we can, in the actual situation, maybe explain this increase, because the cyclical unemployment means that the unemployment rates follows roughly with a lag of 3 to 6 months the economic performance. So in a good economic situation, unemployment is declining, and in a bad economic situation, unemployment is increasing. And we will talk this in more detail, and for this later on we then need also the so-called business cycle concept. So, and for this we say here in the medium term we speak about roughly between 1 to 3 years. Oh, and the last one, a little bit I talked already about this, is maybe then the most important type kind of unemployment, the so-called structural one. So that although you are willing to work, maybe you have almost no chance to get a work, and this means that your skills, your competences are not demanded in the labor market. And this you should really keep in mind, that you educate yourself in the right way. That in the future, really you have good chances to get a job. And again, I recommend that you really start to use artificial intelligence so that you for yourself can become better. Because I think in my forecast, I would say that this is one of the main drivers in the near future of what happens at the labor market, that many things will change there. I don't say to the bad, but it just changes. And if you are able to use these very nice new tools, then I would say that you even have better chances to get a good job. So then let's come in a little bit more detail to these different kinds of unemployment. So seasonal is just the fluctuation in production. So from the supply side during the year, and of course the production in the agricultural and also in the construction sector will go down during winter time. So we should not be surprised if then the unemployment rate is increasing. And also from the demand side, we have differences during the year, and here we can talk mainly about the tourism sector. And of course, we have organized that we have this long holiday period over summertime, and in general also here we have the demand dependent on the weather, of course, and in general we would say the weather during summertime in the midst of Europe is a little bit better than during winter time. And what else do we see? Because with this here we can, so to speak, explain the decrease in spring, because then we coming from winter, agricultural, construction sector, and so on is increasing, and so here explanation of the decrease of unemployment rate in spring. But with this, we cannot explain the decrease in autumn. And this is mainly due to so-called hiring cycles. Because in general, if you think when you are ending school, in general, it ends in the end of summer. And also if you are not studying, but if you are learning in the enterprises, then you there also go to these further schools, and also there in general this education ends mainly in summer, so roughly in August or in September. And this, of course, know also the human resource um, departments within the enterprises. So they know in general there are always every year coming new good educated people to the labor market in the beginning of autumn, and then they start seeking. And therefore, we have then this decrease in autumn. So mostly the education ends in summer, and therefore often enterprises are starting to hire in autumn. And this then also means that we have this decrease of unemployment rate. Okay, so right now we are looking just up to a time period within the year, so less than 1 year. Question? Yeah, but this hiring cycle means not that you're starting there. You are just know that there are the people are coming. So many contracts therefore are just starting at the 1st of October, and yeah, and then in December, January, of course, you have then also an overlap with this weather effect, but there are just not that many new people coming into the labor market. And this is meant by the hiring cycle. Okay, and then we have another short-term unemployment. And yep, yeah, okay. So hiring cycles, the explanation is that mostly in our education system, the education ends in summer, and therefore often enterprises are starting to hire people. We need here to hire people in autumn, and this then ends up in a decrease of unemployment rate um, in autumn. Okay. Yeah, and another kind, short-term kind of unemployment is in general yeah, think of yourself. Maybe you end up, you get your bachelor, and then you start seeking for a job. And then there could be the situation, you as a well-educated person and your competences, your skills um, uh, match 100% with some enterprise who is seeking for a job, but you don't know from each other because you have an asymmetry in information, because it takes just some time that you really find each other. And therefore, then maybe you are looking for some weeks, 2, 3, 4 months for a job until you have a match. And therefore, there are some people, these are not very many, these are not many people, roughly maybe 15 to 100,000, but this is just due to that it takes some time until the demand and supply really matches. So in general, this is a problem of incomplete information in the labor market, so in the seeking process. So sometimes then, if you quit one job, although it is clear that you get a new, you have maybe some window of some months between starting the new job. So, but then we have a difference between these two kinds of unemployment. Here in the seasonal unemployment, we can say that the framework of the reasons are stable. So we cannot do very much about this to decrease this causes for unemployment. While here, this can be improved via a better seeking process. So here we can say that the framework is not stable. We can something do about this. And if we later talk about the business cycle, I will come back to this two differences. That in this case, we cannot do very much about seasonal unemployment, but we can do something about the frictional unemployment. Yeah, then the cyclical unemployment component. This is due to the business cycle. Topic later. There we will talk a little bit in more detail about the business cycle, but in general, we can say that we have a business cycle within 7 to 10 years every time the time pattern between a boom and a recession really repeats every time. And therefore, we can say, yeah, well, in a boom time where we have and that there we have high unemployment, and in a recession, especially when we have underutilization of potential output, and what it is potential output, this we will do then also later when we are talking about the business cycle, that within a recession also as I already argued, we have an increase of unemployment. And maybe you have already seen this picture for the business cycle, that in general we have a long-term trend of the economic performance, and within this we have this fluctuation similar to the seasonal fluctuation around this long-term trend. And this would be then a boom, and here a recession with high unemployment, and here with low. And since we see this also in the data, then we find that the overall business cycle, that this is roughly 7 to 10 years, and then half of it you see this period of cyclical unemployment between 1 to 3 years. This is due to the overall period of one business cycle. Yeah, and the last one, of course, in the long run, the most important for the economy is the structural unemployment. And here we hope that we really make a good job, that you will be good educated. Because in general, over time, we have a sectoral change that we make a decision within our societies, and especially in Germany, we have roughly 10 years ago made these decisions between our energy policy. And this, of course, means then that there will be a loss in jobs in the coal mine, in the coal industry, and in the nuclear sector. We have shut down our nuclear power plants last year, and it is planned to shut down the coal-fired power plants roughly within the midst of the 2030s. So there, of course, then we have a loss of jobs there. And then about this I talked when I announced this, that on Monday we had the new award of the Nobel Prize, that in general we see this technological change, and here, yeah, in my opinion, the main driver is digitalization, and since 2-3 years especially, we have the artificial intelligence, that production processes really will change in the future, and that you, so to speak, need more or other skills to be successful in the labor market. So start this right now, and then I would say that you have a good future. And the last one is sometimes if we look at different regions, especially in Germany, then there we have a discrepancy between demand and supply. So in some areas in Germany, there are living mostly old people. So then it is not a very big surprise that in this region, the enterprises, the industry is not going, because they won't find there the people they need. And because of this, and of course the demographic change, there we have these differences between the unemployment rates in different regions. Well, and yeah, unfortunately and hopefully, this especially due to the change in the energy policy, that maybe the labor market situation in our area in Wilhelmshaven is becoming better, because right now we have almost the highest unemployment rates in Germany, in Wilhelmshaven. Because they're just being at the border, on the one side sea, and not very much industry. Therefore, we have actual quite high unemployment rates. But on the other hand, right now we have this really huge chance, in my opinion, that looking at the renewable energies, that all this energy is coming just within this region here, that the energy, the wind energy from Scotland, from Norway, from Denmark will be plugged in just in Wilhelmshaven, and hopefully then also the industry comes, because here is the energy. But we will see if the politicians can make a good job due to this. Yeah, so this structural unemployment, this is maybe the main point where we have to have a look at it, because if this long-term trend is very flat, then of course this structural component will be large. Okay, and then we had some questions already, and I postponed this because then we have this so-called hidden unemployment. So the question is, who is counted in unemployment? And there, I think you mentioned it. Well, we have in Germany that not definitely with 65 or 66 you are retiring, but that you are that you retire a little bit earlier, the early retirement. And well, then, of course, you are 61 or something like this. You are still in this interval, but these people we do not count anymore. And this is also in the actual discussion, how to get these people back into work. And this we right now start maybe to change in the social framework in our country. But there, this was your question. These people we do not count. Or we have sometimes the situation that the people are going to the employment agency, and then you see, well, they have not the right skills. They have almost no chance, even if they look for a job, to get a new job. And then we send them to qualification programs. And if they are for the next 6 months or something like this in a qualification program, then they drop out of the statistic. But still, economically, we would say, well, they are unemployed. About short-term work, I have already talked about this. Roughly, if we are not in a crisis, these are maybe 300 to 400,000 people. And sometimes we have the idea of just job creation schemes. In history, this was yeah, a stronger reason. Right now, we do not have this that much anymore. And yeah, this data, then we can look how many people are these. And this is a German Labor Market Institute, and they provide this data. Of course, there is no common definition who has to be counted and who has not to be counted, but they, to my opinion, counted reasonably. And here we can say there is a component of roughly 1 million people, which we call a hidden unemployment, which we could utilize if we want, and maybe especially if we look at this early retirement, that there comes in the future a significant number of people who are possible to work, roughly 1 million. people, and this here we distinguish also two: a hidden reserve, and I talked about this, people who are in some other programs, this further qualification education, or especially when people are coming from abroad, then we say please start at first to learn German in language courses, and of course this early retirement. And in the other one is that here we have people which are not registered. Well, in general, they say they are in a period where they not directly look for a job, but in the longer term they would start in general take up a new unemployment. And adding up these two components, again, we are at roughly 1 million people. Yeah, then, as I said before, we want to look at the importance of these two different price indices. And here we go. We are now at the labor market, and think of the situation of wage negotiations. And then when we talked about prices, we said, well, if I have 1,000 euros today, and we have a price increase of 3%, then in the future I can, with the same 1,000 euros, less in the future. And now think about yourself. You are employed, and let's say you are earning 50,000 euros per year. And then due to the consumer price index, you have an increase of prices of, let's say, 4%. Then you are still doing the same. But if you are not earning more in the future than these 50,000 euros, then although you are working the same, you are doing the same, you can buy in real terms less. So it wouldn't be then a surprise that you are going to your company and you are asking, well, you see, inflation due to consumer prices, because this measures the goods and services which I buy as a household. This is my private consumption. That due to this price increase, I want a higher wage, a wage increase of 4%. And this seems quite reasonable. So the labor demand side looks in principle at the CPI. And in general, I want a wage increase in parallel to the development of the CPI. But then look, oh, sorry, not labor demand. You are supplying the labor. So workers. And then the companies, the labor demand side, they are providing all goods and services in the market. They will look in general at the whole economy. They are producing all of the investment goods, which we are not consuming. And so their relevant indicator for the price development is the GDP deflator. And then let's assume this GDP deflator has only increased by 2%. Then, of course, an overall price increase in the whole economy of 2% would mean that also the revenue of the companies due to the price effect would also increase by 2%. And then in general, they can say, well, I can provide you an increase of your wage due to my revenue increase of 2%. Because then I can say my revenue has increased by 2%, then I can also increase my cost, my labor cost also by 2%. So this is also a reasonable argumentation. And also that this labor demand side, the companies also argue, well, if I would increase your wage by 4%, then here I have an overproportional increase of the cost side. And then in the medium or long term, I will have a problem with my profits. And then maybe I have to drop out the market. So both argumentations are reasonable. So the labor demand, the company side, looks in principle at the GDP deflator. And in the end, this would mean in my example, inflation 4%, GDP deflator development only 2%, then you have a clash of the supply and the demand side. So then, for example, or assume GDP deflator smaller than CPI, then we have frictions in the labor market because both have a reasonable argumentation and they cannot match. And then we have this fighting situation in the labor market. And if we look at the historical data in Germany, then actually we have this situation here. In the beginning of the 2000s until the financial crisis, we could say here we have roughly a situation where we have 2% inflation rate due to CPI and a development in GDP deflator by only 1%. So here CPI larger than GDP, and this would mean frictions in or general frictions in the labor market. And here we have the situation where they are the same or inflation is a little bit below the GDP deflator. And this would mean no general frictions in the labor market. And actually, if we look there in these time periods in the labor market in Germany, then we also saw this, that there in the wage negotiations, in this period, we had not that many problems compared to the wage negotiations in the former period, where the relation between CPI and GDP was just the other way around. Well, there we have to we have to wait. So the latest data, um, they are right now roughly the same, and but right now we have frictions in the labor market, maybe a little bit more to other reasons because of the bad economic performance. So just in 2022, 2023, there we had this huge price increase. We talked about this in the energy crisis. And if you remember this, there actually also the nominal wages increased by 5, 6, 7%. So the companies um, they really provided this quite large nominal wage increases because well they had the ability because they could sell also their products to higher prices. But now, because of our structural problem in economic performance, we right now see, although we still have a quite high price development, that we do not see any more a wage increase of 3, 4, or 5%. So again, this would mean general frictions in the labor market, and here no general frictions in the labor market due to this relation. So you cannot read anything. So then I will do it once more. So in general here, wage negotiations, labor supply side. So the workers, they demand for an increase due to the CPI, labor demand side. The companies, they are able to provide an increase in general due to the GDP deflator. And then for the frictions in the labor market, we have a look at the relation between these two. Yep, here to the left. Mm, here? No. Assume. Assume. This should be assume. Yeah, sorry. Okay, and then we come to the last one of our four aims. Where do we have it? Here. The external balance. And we will not spend that much time on this aim. And the reason is for the other three aims, we had found always also a quantitative aggregate. And then we said, well, economic growth roughly between 1 and 3%, inflation roughly 2%, and unemployment, full employment, maybe for Germany 3 to 4%, or for developed countries. And here we have to admit that we do not have a general accepted definition. What do we understand by external balance? And as I showed in the German law, we even have it in the law that we find there. Politics have to look for an external balance. But this law was implemented in the 1960s. And in the 1960s, we had another global framework of international economy compared to our actual situation. And the main difference was that after World War II, we started with a system of fixed exchange rates. And this system lasted until the midst of the 1970s. And there we had as an anchor the US dollar, and this meant every convertible currencies can be exchanged with a fixed ratio to the US dollar. So let's say the German mark 6:1 to US dollar, the British pound 3:1. And if both are fixed with relation to the US dollar, then this means they are also fixed to each other. Because if you have a 6:1 of a German mark with relation to the US dollar and 3:1 of the British pound, then you have 2:1 between the German mark and the British pound. So, but then you have this fixed exchange rate. And then think of a situation that your exports are much larger than your imports. You are selling much more goods than you are importing, you are buying. This would mean that you have a huge capital inflow into your country. But what this means in general for your currency when you have a capital inflow, that would mean that in general your currency has to appreciate. Your currency is more valuable because of this inflow of capital. But now we defined, no, it cannot change. What do you have to do then? Especially the central bank has then to fix this mismatch by just buying the foreign currency. So creating a demand for the foreign currency that you can still have this fixed exchange rate. But this would then mean you have to start just printing money. What means just to print money? Think about your aim system of your four aims. This creates inflation. And in order that you do not have to buy the foreign currency, then within a regime of fixed exchange rate, it would be a good idea that more or less exports and imports would match. So in this framework, there's a reason for a balance of the trade balance. But if you have not a fixed exchange rate system anymore, and the United States quit it in 1973, the system, and right now we have just the free fluctuation of the currencies in the world, then there is no need anymore. Because if you have this capital inflow due to higher exports, then just your currency is appreciating. And yeah, in general, oops, again German. Other. And sometimes find that you say, well, let's still take the trade balanced or the current account, or in general, you should have an aim of low fluctuating currencies, or a very wide interpretation of what is meant by external balance is a low susceptibility from foreign economies, so that if abroad is something changing, that it does not happen very much in your country. But as I mentioned already, in Germany, we are maybe compared to other large economies, the most depending country in the world due to our high exports and imports. Exports and imports are adding up to almost to our overall economic performance. They are relatively as large as our GDP. So in general, we can say in Germany, we do not oops, aim an external balance. And sometimes in textbooks you find that this would be the aim, but in practice we do not find it. And here are the numbers. Well, you see exports are much larger than imports over a time period of 25 years. So X minus M were on average roughly 100 to 200 billion euros. Or if you see here the fluctuation of our currency, this is more or less plus minus 20%, even if you look at the change within a year. So we could also not say that low fluctuations in exchange rate would be some aim. So you don't find it um, as an aim. Oh, it's almost done, but let's just talk a little bit about the last one. Well, in general, when we are look on the dependencies of our country on the foreign countries, then we find the numbers in the so-called balance of payments. This is more or less the same as the national account system where we find all the numbers for GDP. So compare this with the national account system. And yeah, here you have to be a little bit careful because in other lectures you are talking about a balance and the balance of payments. There you are looking at a time period, generally 1 year. So what happens within 1 year? A balance in business administration is just um, defined as you are reporting at 1 day. So you are reporting about stocks. So if we would be accurate, then we have to say that although we name it the balance of payments, it is no balance of payments. Because here we are looking at flow numbers, and in general, a balance is a stock report. So please keep this in mind. And 2 minutes left. How is it defined? What are the different positions within the balance of payment? Well, we find the balance of good and services. So this is the trade balance. In the so-called current account, there we add up also the primary income. Remember here, GDP and GNP, staying here, working abroad, and the other way around. And also we see, especially in Germany, we have many people working here, coming 10 years from abroad, and they make every month a payment back in their home countries. So there we have a general outflow out of Germany. And then, yeah, we have to see, this is the current account, and then we have the capital and the financial accounts where all the financial independencies between the countries are reported, especially direct investment. This is if you have a part 10% more of a company, investment of more than 10%. Oops. In a company So right now, the Chinese guys, they want to buy our companies, and if there is investment larger than 10%, then we call it direct investment, portfolio investments, all the financial derivatives. I think you have also a module, a lecture, international finance, and there you will, I think, talk a lot then about these things, but that you already have heard it. I provide this, that you have seen what is the balance of payments. But this will be no main topic here in this course. Okay, 5 minutes overtime. I'm sorry for this. And then thank you very much for today.